Hello and welcome back. So hopefully you've seen the first two videos, the first one being what is anxiety and the second one being what does anxiety do to my body. And in this session we're going to look at how we can discuss our worries and our fears and what is stressing us. Because when we learn how to discuss, then we are more able to get the help that we need to put things in place. Now, I'm going to share with you a series of questions that you can ask yourself that helps you to have a plan in place. Now, Elsa, that I've mentioned before, they have a worry tree, but not just Elsa. There are so many practices out there. And if you Google worry tree, you'll get all sorts of examples and pictures that you can print off. This is one that Elsa have used. But you could also create your own. The idea is that you have the main problem at the top, and it's all a series of questions that you can ask yourself to help you get down to the bottom. And at the bottom, it's ultimately about letting go. I loved Frozen because that film, Letting It Go, was just as I was starting to teach it in schools about letting go of your feelings, and so it's really great that that became a mainstream kind of phrase, if you like. But ultimately, it really is about letting go of the feelings, because holding on to them does not serve us in a positive and thriving way. So I'm going to show you the questions. We're going to use a couple of very common scenarios that children tend to have. And with those scenarios, we're going to attack them with those questions so you can see how it gets put into place. And then I would like to share with you a rainbow waterfall that I really enjoy, so a kind of mindful practice. So before we start, a little bit of plugging, even though it's backwards. I do have a book and it is available on Amazon, and it is called How to Plant Positivity to Sow Seeds for Success in 7 Simple Chapters. My name is Jenny Eden and I married a Mr. Eden, but back in 1984-85 I had what was kind of a spiritual awakening, and I really wasn't into organised religion and I wasn't into church, and I decided as a kind of bargaining that I promised light, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, that rather than go to those organised places, I would create a garden that I would sit in and contemplate and meditate, tune in, check in. And so since that time, I don't know, I dare to think how many years that is, 30, 40 years, that's what I've done. Everywhere I've gone, I've created a garden. It's been a place where I can be restful and mindful. So that's kind of like my church, if you like. But when I came across the Planting Positivity, which was something I got from the universe, it all had a gardening theme. So it's all about growing, watering, sustaining, pruning, which is chopping away the negativity, and ultimately blooming and thriving. Now the book, sadly, isn't really geared to children, just because the language is a bit more complicated and there aren't pictures and things. But it's part of a course that I run for young adults and old adults, so it might just be of interest to you. Feel free to check it out. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the questions and then we'll put them into a little bit of practice. So, when you become aware, either physically that your body is uncomfortable and showing signs of anxiety, or you're aware of it because of you have thoughts that are creating a nervousness, a tenseness, an anxiety, then what you need to do is ask yourself, what am I thinking? And when you're asking about what you're thinking, then I want you to think, what is the actual worry within that thinking? And if you're thinking something bad, then you're going to be ultimately feeling something bad. Now, we have thousands and thousands of thoughts a day, but the thoughts that we have in our brain are the thoughts that we put there. We are the train drivers of our thought thinking train. So somebody might say something to you that is sharp and pleasant, aggressive, and then they might walk away, and they might be somebody that you don't even really know very well. But even though that person has walked away and they are no longer saying that thing to you, I guarantee you are repeating, repeating what it is that they said to you. And when you repeat that negative or not very pleasant thing that's been said to you, you are embedding it back and back into your brain. So if you chose to stop that thought and change it and reframe it into a different thought, then you would be less likely to feel bad about it. And we're going to go into detail today and in the next video about how we can change those thoughts. So what the next question I want you to ask yourself is, the thing that I'm thinking about and the thing that I'm worrying about, is it true? Is what I'm worrying about likely to happen? Now, worry, it's a bit like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. A rocking chair will not take you anywhere other than keep you occupied. And that's a bit like what worry is. It gives you something to do, it gives you something to think about, but often it just keeps you thinking in a negative and bad way. And so you have to decide, remember the smoke alarm, you have to decide that you want to think differently so that you can ultimately feel different. Now, the next thing I'd like you to think about is, if this wasn't you that was thinking this worry, but it was your friend that was thinking this worry, what would you say to that friend? Now, we tend to be our own worst nightmares. We tend to be our worst enemies because we talk to ourselves in ways that we would never talk to our friends. Because if we did talk to our friends in the way we often talk to ourselves, then we wouldn't have friends for very long. So have a little think about what you would say to yourself if it was a friend with this worry, because sometimes stepping out of that frame and looking at it in a different way helps you to rethink around it, helps you to reframe it, helps to give a different perspective. Now, the next question to ask yourself is, in 3 months' time, is this likely to still be a worry? Because it's really interesting, with the passage of time, often things have already played out, and we often look back and go, oh, do you know, that really wasn't quite so bad. It didn't turn out as badly as I thought. And so if we think that in 3 months' time, it's not really something that's going to be troubling us, well, then why don't we give ourselves the power of getting rid of it now so it doesn't escalate and become a problem? And all of this is helping you to step back and to think about the amygdala and to put into action the things that help you to calm down and calm the amygdala down so that you can see the bigger picture and you can help and feel happier. And the last thing I want you to think about is, has this happened before? Or has something similar happened before? Because if you're worrying about a spelling test that takes place at the end of the week, and you're worrying about not getting enough marks in your spelling test, or you're worrying about people then judging you because of the marks that you've got, has this happened before? And when you have revised and when you've been able to get a good result or a better result than before, how has that made you feel? Because looking back at our past successes helps us to see that actually it is possible. We can move beyond this. Okay? So let's have a think about a scenario that might be a worry for you. Now, I worked with all sorts of children from nursery right up until year 6, and I know that in years 3 and 4 and in years 5 and 6 there is often a residential trip. So imagine that there is a school trip and all of your friends are really, really super excited about it, but you don't feel that you can get excited about it. In fact, you're feeling terrified about it because you've never stayed away from home before. So this is a general worry, but it is a worry that a lot of children have. So going on the principle of those questions, we're worrying about a residential trip because we've never stayed away from home before. So the question is, what am I thinking? Now, you might be thinking, on the residential trip, there could be some kind of accident. You could have an accident in the coach on the way there, or you could find that you're not sleeping, you're worried about all sorts of things happening in the, monsters under the bed, or it being an unfamiliar bed and just not being comfortable and sharing a room with other people, which you might not do when you're at home. So you want to be looking at what it is that you're thinking, and what you're thinking is creating the fear. So let's imagine that we're worried about the journey and we're worried about being sick. Now, what we're really worried about is not physically being sick. We're worried about the impact of being sick has on people around us, or people, ooh, they've been sick, or, making fun of you because you have been sick on the bus. So if we think about that, then can we change that thinking? And the answer is yes, we can always change our thinking. We can remind ourselves that we can breathe deeply. We can remind ourselves that if we do think sickness is a problem, we talk to a teacher or a teaching assistant, and we sit at the front of the bus and we have a bucket nearby, so that if we are going to be sick, it's going to be contained and it's going to be okay. And often by sitting near an adult, the stresses and worries of that being sick on the bus do tend to go away. So that's what you want to be thinking. How likely is this to happen? What is it that I'm worrying about? Now, what would you say to a friend that was worrying about a residential trip and worrying about the journey there, or worrying about being frightened at night? What would you say to a friend? You'd often maybe say to them, do you know, it's going to be okay because there's going to be so many amazing experiences on this trip, and everybody in the past has talked about this trip in a really positive way. So it's going to be okay. And you might even say to that friend, I'm here for you. I'll sit with you. I'll support you. You can sit with yourself. You can support yourself. There is so much more we can do for ourselves, that we don't have to rely on other people. And part of what I do is show people the strategies so that they can become self-sufficient. Now, in 3 months' time, are you going to be worrying about this residential trip? And the answer is no, because in 3 months' time, you'll have been on the trip and you will have your experiences, you will have your memories, you will have experienced it to the point that you know that it turned out okay. So if in 3 months' time it's not going to be a worry, you can decide that it's not going to be a worry now, because you can change your thinking so that you can change your feeling, because you are that clever. You are that amazing that you can recognize when a thought is going to go along a path that's going to create discord, disharmony, upset, sadness, worry, fear, and stress, and you can decide to stop it in its tracks, and you can change that thought so that you can feel better. When you know how to do this, it becomes second nature. But you have to just keep practicing, and you follow these questions to help guide you into that practice. Ask yourself, has it happened before? Have you been on a school trip before where you've been sick? And if you have, how did it turn out? Did you have people helping you and supporting you? In which case, the chances are you're going to have people help you and support you on this trip, so it can become less of a concern. And in terms of the worry tree, what is it I'm worrying about? Can you do anything about it? Now, you either can, in which case you make a plan. Yes, I can do something about this residential trip. I can talk to a grown-up, a parent, a teaching assistant, a teacher. I can talk to a grown-up about what my worries are. And by sharing those worries with an adult, they can give me some additional strategies to help make me feel better. That's the plan. And you can either do that plan straight away, in which case you do it, or you have to wait until you're home to speak to mum, or till lunchtime to speak to the teacher, in which case you think, right, well, I'm going to make the plan and I'm going to do it later on today. And ultimately, you then have to learn to let it go. And if there's nothing you can do about it, if you genuinely think there's nothing you can do about it, then worrying is that rocking chair that isn't going to get you anywhere. In which case, how about you learn to let it go? Because by letting it go, you can help yourself to feel better. Okay? And after you've let it go, then you think of something else. You think of something positive, whether it's the same thought but twisted into a more positive thing, or you just completely and utterly think of something very different. You think of what brings you joy. That could be kittens, that could be an auntie or a grandparent or a friend or a particular holiday, or it could be a particular place. You think of whatever it is that brings you joy so that you can feel better. So the way in which we learn to let go is we think about the way that we are feeling and we ask ourselves. Now, this method is the Sedona method, and it's from Hale Dworskin, and it's absolutely life-changing and phenomenal. I have asked lots of times, I've emailed lots of times over the years to see if there's any way that I could work with Hale in order to become like a certified practitioner. Unfortunately, I've not been able to get very far, so I haven't necessarily the permissions to use this, but I have used it every single day since 2009, and I often do it more than once a day. And it absolutely changes the way I feel. So I do want to share it, but I share it with the caveat that you do look at Hale Dworskin, because he's phenomenal. The work is phenomenal. There's a whole load of there's books and CDs and things that can help you. So you ask yourself, do I want to feel this way? Do you want to be feeling churned up, anxious, worried about this problem? And if the answer is yes, well, then you stay as you are. And you stay as you are, feeling that way, until feeling that way becomes so uncomfortable that you're prepared to agree that you don't want to feel that way anymore. And when you don't want to feel that way anymore, the next question to ask yourself is, could you let it go? In theory, could you choose to let that feeling go? And you let that feeling go by letting that thought go. Would you give yourself permission to do that in theory? Because you are the one that is putting the thoughts in. So could you choose not to put that thought in anymore? And then if you agree, yes, in theory, you could choose to let it go, then the next question to ask yourself is, would you? Would you let it go? Would you give yourself permission to let that thought go, to let that feeling go, so that you can feel good because it's your divine right to feel good. Would you let it go? And if you decide that you would, then when? When are you going to let it go? Are you going to let it go later on when you get home? Are you going to let it go at Easter? Are you going to let it go at Christmas? Are you going to let it go after you've done something? No, you're going to let it go right now. And this is where my bubbles come in, because I kind of imagine that you can blow yourself a bubble and you put your worry in that bubble. Now, when a bubble pops, there's nothing left. There's hardly anything there. So you imagine you put your worry in the bubble, the worry bubbles, and you blow them away. And you imagine that that worry of yours is just going up and up and up and up, and it gets taken away and it gets absorbed by everything else in the universe, further, 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 further up. And it just gets absorbed. And light holds onto it and it just pops and disappears. Okay? So that is the kind of thought processes. And if you watch this video again and again, you'll be able to get those questions. But really, it's what am I thinking? What is the actual worry? Could I change that thinking? Is it likely to happen? If it wasn't me with this worry, but a friend of mine, what would I say to them? What advice would I give them? And in 3 months' time, is this still going to be a worry? So if not, can I just choose to get rid of it now rather than give myself grief? And has it happened before? Has anything like this happened before? And how have I handled it? And how have people helped me to handle it? And how successful was that? Because if it was successful and I managed to get over it, then it all helps me to keep cementing those steps. Now, I did say that we'd do 2, but I'm conscious of the time and it's already 22 minutes. So hopefully that will give you like a structure to what you're thinking and worrying about. And hopefully it will give you a strategy to help you cope with that. Now, everything changes. And often we're very resistant to the change ourselves. But what I'd like you to do to help develop a practice, a mindfulness, is have a look at all of the things that are changing. So, go for a walk and look at what is changing in your garden, in the street. If you go to a place of nature, then all throughout the year you will notice changes. Now, some changes are big and some changes are small and some changes we feel happy about and some changes we don't. But I want you to kind of sit with those changes and recognize that it is a part of life. It is about the growing. And think about the fact that those changes, it goes from morning to nighttime every single day. We might not be happy about nighttime. We might be ecstatic about nighttime, but it is a change and it will keep on going whether we like it or not. And sometimes it's just about recognizing that those changes are a part of life and accepting them rather than resisting them. Because what you resist persists. So it's about embracing those changes, and I hope that that helps you to embrace the change. Now, I did mention a waterfall meditation, so I'm going to explain to you. So in the last video, I gave you a couple of hints as to different things you can do. So I want you to do your deep breathing. I want you to do your high 5 breathing or your window pane breathing, or if you've got one of those balls, I want you to do your breathing ball breathing. And just bring yourself down and sit with yourself a little bit. And then we all know about showers, okay? Most of us have showers now in the house. So it's an almost endless supply of water, right? So I want you to imagine that you're kind of under a shower head, but instead of it being water, it is beautiful, beautiful rainbow light. So the water, the rain, the light, it's all the colours of the rainbow. It's blues and reds and yellows and oranges and pinks and greens. Now, every part of the body has a color that it really resonates with. And I want you to imagine that that rainbow waterfall is just pouring down from your crown, down your face, down your neck, down your shoulders and arms, and down your core, and down your legs, and down into your feet. And all of those colors, they can swirl around your body, cleansing your body, taking away all negative charges, negative cells, negative thoughts, and just replenishing the body with whatever light color it needs to become vibrant and healthy and whole. Now, on my YouTube channel, there is a meditation. It's about 30 minutes, I think, of the rainbow waterfall meditation. So if you wanted, you could play that and use it as a guide. But thank you for listening. I'm sorry it's been 26 minutes long, but hopefully you'll have found that useful. And it's just a pleasure to listen to your comments and know that you're sharing this, because it's just my joy to know that it might help others. So thank you very much for listening, and see you again on the next video. Bye bye.